Our first step is to open Modo. Like any modern application, this is done by double-clicking the icon. There are a couple other ways to start too, depending on your operating system, either from the dock or from your Start menu. If this is the first time you have opened Modo, then you'll be greeted right away by a number of dialog boxes popping up. The first is asking if you'd like to check for updates. If you'd like to be reminded when a new version of Modo is posted, then select Yes. This next dialog box is asking if we can gather usage statistics. This is just helpful information we gather to help make Modo more stable. No personal information is transmitted, so if you can, please select Yes. This last dialog is the interactive showcase. It has some basics of working with Modo and links to training information. But this is stuff we'll be covering here, so let's disable this menu for now and simply close the window. If this is not the first time opening Modo and you've poked around a little bit already, you might have noticed Modo's pliable interface. If that's the case, just to make sure we're all using the same layouts, I want to reset everything back to baseline. This is also good information for beginners to know. If you've mistakenly changed something and you don't know how to get it back, this operation will solve that. This is done using the reset option found in the File menu. But you should only ever run this command when no files are open, as it will close them anyways. You select the command found under the File menu, and a pop-up warns you that this action cannot be undone. So select Yes to reset your interface, and now we're all on the exact same baseline version of the user interface exactly as it was when Modo was first installed. Now let's take a quick poke around the user interface, or UI for short. I'm not going to go into any depth here, but I just want to get you oriented where things generally are located. The top bar is where the menu commands reside. Just about every option of Modo can be activated from here, organized by function. Like any other application, clicking the title will open a menu drop-down. From there, simply moving the mouse will open the other ones while you hover over the title. Many commands in the menu you'll notice also display the associated keyboard shortcut next to it. These are good to learn as you go through to speed you along in your 3D workflow. Directly below the menu bar is the Workspace tabs. Each tab contains a different workspace layout with tools focused on a specific task. We'll mostly be working in the modeling layout, so there's no need to switch to any others right now. On the left side here is our toolbox. These are the tools that we will use to create and modify our scenes. Clicking these tabs down the side of the toolbox will display different sets of tools organized by function. This big window here in the center is the main viewport. All of the visible elements in our scene are displayed here. This is where we'll be doing most of our work. I like to think of it as a window view into the little world we'll be creating. On the right-hand side here are our lists and properties. The lists simply show all the various elements in a given scene by name, and the properties show the associated attributes, or these are the settings related to a given selection. The tabs within each panel switch between different lists, allowing you to view information in different ways. The big difference being that they are optimized for specific tasks. That should be enough detail for what we're going to be doing next, so let's move on. With most projects you'll be working on in Modo, the ultimate goal will be to produce a rendered image. Rendering is the act of calculating lighting, shading, in any models that are in a given scene. So essentially, rendering is the process of generating the pretty pictures that you see. There are quite a few steps required to make a scene from scratch, so let's take a shortcut this time and just open a pre-made scene. So I'm going to go into my File menu, and this is where we open and save our files, just as you would for, say, a word processor. Using the Open command, I navigate the folder structure to the training content included with these videos. In the Video 2 folder, let's open the Coffee Maker file, select the file, and click Open. This loads the saved scene from your hard drive into memory so it can be worked on now. As you might have guessed from the name, our scene is a basic coffee maker. You see right away the coffee maker model is in the main viewport here, but it loads a little far away, so let's bring it closer using the View command, Fit All. Another way to see all the items in the scene is take a look at it in our items list. Make sure you have your items list visible here in the side panel. Here you can see the coffee maker, the coffee pot, a directional light, a camera, and a cyc wall. A cyc wall is just short for cyclorama, which is a seamless type of wall often used by photographers to produce a nice, even background. Each item in the scene is named after its real-world equivalent. Given that, it's pretty easy to guess which each item contributes to the scene. In the items list here on the right, we can select any item and see that it makes it solid shaded in our main 3D viewport. This is an important detail to note. Selected items here are the active layers. These are the things we can modify. You will sometimes hear of items being referred to as being the foreground layer when they are active like this, and the wireframe layers as being the background layers. The term wireframe denotes any item drawn as outline edges, because it looks as if the object is made up of thin wires rather than a solid surface. This is just a way of distinguishing objects in the viewport, so you can more easily see and work on the active objects. It also makes the difference between active and inactive more obvious. The viewport really is meant as a reference for placement and shape. To see surface qualities and shadows, we'll need to render the scene to see what it really looks like. To do this, we use the menu command found under Render and select Render. I'll try it now. This pops up this render display window and the scene is automatically calculated. During the rendering process, each setting of the scene is fully evaluated. The color of the light, how reflective or dull the surfaces are, all of this and more is processed into what is called a 2D raster image. This just means it's a fixed resolution grid made up of tiny pixels. Now, depending on the speed of your processor and your number of cores, the image shouldn't take too long to calculate. And when it's done, you'll see it displayed in the window here. Now, when we scale up the image, the pixels just get bigger. We don't see more detail. I'm using the scroll wheel here to scale the image up and down. A pixel is the tiniest subdivision of any image. The same as the pixels in the images you snap with your smartphone. Except the pixels generated here in 3D give us infinite control over the final result. With our render complete, I think it looks pretty good. So we can save this image out using the Save button here at the bottom of the window. Once saved, we can open it in an image editor for further processing, such as in Photoshop, or we can use it directly in a page layout tool, or even post it to a website and share it with our friends. Click the button to open the Save Image dialog box. The file can be saved in a variety of formats using the Format dropdown right here. Of course, this is entirely depending on what it is you want to do with it. I prefer the PNG format because of its lossless compression, meaning you keep the full quality of the image you rendered, but the file size takes up less space on your hard drive. So I select the format, designate a file name, and click OK to save the image. That's it. We've just rendered our first 3D image in Modo. Now, if this were just a photograph, we would be stuck with that lighting and that camera position, pretty much everything else. But it's not. This is a full 3D scene. So let's close this window and explore our scene a little bit more. In our main viewport here, we can take a look at our scene. And since it's all 3D, we can actually explore around all the various elements. This is called navigating the view, and it's controlled by these three icons in the upper right-hand corner. The arrow translates around the scene. Just click and drag with the left mouse button to change the location. This circular arrow rotates around the scene in the same way. Click and drag. The magnifying glass zooms in or out to the center of the window. Try practicing with these icons a little bit. Of course, you'll soon realize how tedious it can be to work this way for any long period of time. Thankfully, there's keyboard shortcuts that allow us to navigate a lot more quickly. So if we hover the mouse pointer over our viewport and first press and hold the Shift and the Alt key on the keyboard, now with those keys pressed, I can left mouse button click and drag over the viewport and get the same panning motion as I did with the icon, moving directly to the left or right depending on which way we drag. For rotation, we can release the Shift key and only press Alt. Now when you click and drag, you orbit around the object in the scene. This type of rotation in Modo is called trackball rotation. If you imagine that the viewport is filled with a giant sphere over the top, then clicking on the virtual sphere and dragging around orbits the scene as if it was contained inside of the sphere. Clicking the front of the sphere allows you to drag up and down and left and right to orbit, but clicking in the upper edges allows you to rotate the horizon as well. Lastly, to zoom in and out of an area, place the cursor over where you want to zoom toward and hold down the Control and Alt keys this time. Clicking and dragging left and right will zoom you in and out toward the location of the cursor. If you ever move so far away that you get lost, you can use the menu command View Fit All. This automatically zooms the view to where your items are in the scene, that way you can't get lost. I encourage you to pause the video right here and practice some on your own. Navigating the 3D scene will be the most common thing you'll be doing, and getting proficient at it as soon as possible will make your life much easier moving forward. So now that we have the navigation aspect covered, we can also easily change our view to see our scene in different ways, effectively jumping our view to specific locations. This is done with this selector button in the interface. Clicking here will open up the menu showing several other options. You can think of them like shortcuts for the different views: top-down view, bottom-up, all of the sides. The nice things about these views also is that they don't have any perspective to them, which is especially helpful when you want to accurately line up objects with each other. Perspective distortions can sometimes make it a little difficult to do that, but that's getting a little ahead of ourselves. What we really want to do here is select the camera view. This will show us exactly what our camera is seeing. So what I really wanted to demonstrate here is that our rendered image is unlike a fixed photograph, because we can change the position of the camera quite easily, using the exact same navigation technique we just learned. Shift-Alt to pan, Alt to orbit, or Control-Alt to scale. So let's adjust the camera a little bit to this angle and make the coffee maker a little bit more centered and render it out again. If you recall, I mentioned that all the menu items have shortcuts listed next to them. You can see them on the menu here, and the shortcut to render our scene is F9. So if we dismiss the menu and we press F9 on our keyboard, we trigger another rendering option. This is what our image looks like from our new perspective. You don't need to save an image each time. Oftentimes rendering is an iterative process: adjust a setting and then rendering again to see your result. Of course, rendering over and over again can be somewhat tedious as well, so a good shortcut to that process is to open our preview window. If you press F8 on your keyboard now instead of F9, you'll open a different kind of view. To engage preview to actually start a render operation, we also need to click this white play button in the center. Now preview will render your scene similar to the standard render, but will automatically update as adjustments are made. This can be changes made in the window itself or directly in your viewport. So there's no need to go through the process of pressing render and waiting for the image to complete to get control of Modo again. So we can adjust our camera view using the exact same navigation procedure, and then see our results instantly update as we move. Give it a try for yourself. So if you like the new camera angle, let's go ahead and close preview by pressing F8 again and then save our scene. We don't want to overwrite the existing scene, so let's click on the File menu and choose the Save As option, noting that the keyboard shortcut for the next time is Ctrl-Shift-S. And this dialog will give our file a new name so it won't overwrite the existing file. And I just want to note that the format we're saving to here is LXO. This is the native Modo format. When working on your own scenes later on, you'll always want to make sure that this is the format you choose. For new scenes, it should always be the default. So click OK to save our scene, and we're done with our first lesson. In this video, we covered the File menu to open and save scenes. We covered two different ways to render our scene using both the Render Display window with F9 and Preview window with F8. We also covered how to navigate through a scene in the main 3D viewport using keyboard shortcuts. In the next video, we'll be adding in some additional skills.